This GeographyBurst video focuses on coastal management, hard and soft engineering. You should use pages 106 to 113 of your textbook to support this video. During this GeographyBurst, we will look at both examples of hard and soft engineering strategies used along the coast, the advantages and disadvantages of using these strategies, and we'll also look at our two case studies for coastal management, those being Medmerry and Managed Retreat and Lyme Regis. Firstly, we will describe, which of course means say what you see. What are the key facts which you know? Outline them clearly. Firstly, hard engineering, which is protecting the coast by using artificial structures to contain natural processes. So building things out of steel and out of concrete along the coast to stop erosion. And secondly, soft engineering is also a way of protecting the coast. However, soft engineering uses less intrusive and more environmentally friendly methods that work with the natural processes to protect the coast, so they're less visible to tourists or residents of the area. Next, we will explain how several examples of different coastal management work. So when we're explaining, we are saying what we see plus why it is. You should outline the reasons for events or facts. So now we will explain the different kinds of coastal management, starting with hard engineering. And our first example is sea walls. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a wall that's built along the coast next to the sea, made of concrete or rock, and it protects the coast behind it. Sometimes a seawall can be curved so that it acts in a way that it disperses the energy that the wave brings into the coast and fires that energy back out to the sea, so it's not eroding the rock behind it. It's quite a costly way of protecting the coast, between £5,000 and £10,000 per metre, but it's very effective at stopping the sea. It can offer a walkway on top of it to encourage tourism of the area. However, negatively, it can look very unnatural and it is very expensive, and if it needs to be rebuilt, that could be a very costly project. Secondly, riprap, or sometimes called rock armour, is placing large boulders at the foot of a cliff. Again, stopping the cliff behind it from being eroded. The rocks force the waves to break and absorb the energy instead of the cliff. The cost is really high, around about £200,000 per 100 metre of the coast that you protect. It's relatively cheap compared with the likes of a sea wall, however, and it can provide interest to the coast because it presents a natural habitat for fish, so it can encourage fishermen to use the area. However, disadvantages include rocks have to be sourced from somewhere, sometimes along the coast, so that removes their natural protection. It can be expensive to move those rocks. They often don't look natural because they're different kinds of geology, different rock type to what's in the natural area, and they can be unsightly, they look ugly. And thirdly, groins. These act in a different way from seawalls and rock armour because they stop the process of longshore drift. They're built out of either wood or rock and built at an angle perpendicular to the coastline. They stop sand and sediment moving along the coastline. So they build up the beach on one side of the groin. A timber groin will cost around about £150,000 each, okay, every 200 metre section of groin. They can bring advantages because they create a wider beach and tourists will use that. They provide useful structures for people interested in fishing, and they're not as expensive as some other coastal management techniques. However, they interrupt longshore drift, starving beaches further along the coast, who are normally supplied by the sand from that beach, which can lead to increased rates of erosion in other stretches of the coast. So it's shifting the problem rather than solving it. And again, they look unnatural. These long structures made out of wood or stone stretching out into the sea look unattractive. Three examples of soft engineering are laid out on this slide. First of all, beach nourishment, which is adding extra sand or shingle to an existing beach to make the beach higher or wider. The sand or sediment can be brought from other beaches, further along the coast, or in some cases even brought from other countries. It's best done when the same kind of sand and shingle, same colour, same grain size is brought in to match the aesthetic of this particular part of the coast. It's usually transported to the beach by barge, a seafaring ship. It can cost in the region of £500,000 per 100 metre of the beach that it covers, and some of its advantages are that it's relatively cheap and easy to maintain. It obviously blends in because you're just adding more sand to an existing beach, and it can also increase the amount of tourists that visit the area because the beach is larger, so there's more space for them. However, there are disadvantages such as the fact that it needs quite regular maintenance unless other structures are built to help maintain that beach. Secondly, we have dune fencing, which is exactly what it says. It's putting a fence around an existing sand dune. So fences are constructed along the beach, facing the sea, along existing dunes to encourage new sand dunes to form. So more sand dunes help to protect the existing dunes behind them. It costs anywhere between £400 and £2,000 per 100 metre of coastline. And some of the good things about dune fencing are that it has little to no impact on the wildlife in the area, and it can also control the public and stop them from trespassing or setting foot on the dunes when that could potentially damage them. However, disadvantages include the fences are unsightly, and again it does require maintenance, especially during storms, if that can damage the fences themselves. Our third example of soft engineering is dune regeneration. Sand dunes are really good buffers and they stop the sea from eroding the land behind them. So dune regeneration is all about planting marram grass, which is a plant that's really good at living in salty conditions next to the sea, and that marram grass helps to stabilise the dunes and stop them from being eroded. It costs between £200 and £2,000 per 100 metres, and good things about it are it looks natural, more greenery in the area, and it's relatively cheap. However, negatively, it can take a lot of time to plant all the marram grass. People don't always like being told they can't walk on the marram grass, so the area becomes unusable for them. And also, if there are storms, the marram grass can easily be damaged or even washed away. Now comes our two case studies, the first of which being Lyme Regis. Lyme Regis is part of a World Heritage Site, one of the most famous coastlines in the world, the Jurassic coastline, which can be found in Dorset and Devon. The coastline is incredibly fast eroding. It's one of the fastest in Europe in terms of its erosion due to the powerful waves that come in from the southwest. The area needed to be protected because it's valuable in terms of the income that it generates for the area in terms of tourism. Okay, and to avoid conflict, consultation meetings were held throughout the process when they decided what kind of engineering strategies they were going to use to protect this coastline to keep the public informed. Below is a map of the Jurassic coast where you can see Lyme Regis, and you can also see Swanage Bay, which is another of our case studies. So in Lyme Regis, there was a 4-phase plan brought in to protect this coastline. The first phase was creating a sea wall at the mouth of the River Lim. This cost £1.4 million and it was used to stabilise the cliffs. This was as early as the 1990s, so this case study has been ongoing for a number of decades now. The second phase was even more expensive. £22 million was spent on reinforcing the seawall, creating rock armour at the Cobb, and also soft engineering beach nourishment to build up the beach so it could absorb more energy and sort of disperse the erosive power of the waves. Phase 2 was brought in 2005. Phase 3 was drawn up but never undertaken, as one of the meetings decided that the costs outweighed the benefits. The land that would have been protected by Phase 3 was actually of less value than it would cost to implement protection. And finally, Phase 4 cost a further £20 million, and it was spent on constructing a seawall in front of the existing seawall that had been breached, that had been broken down after many years of erosion. And also further cliff stabilisation was brought in to protect 430 homes, and this was in 2013, so the most recent phase of the protection of this coastline. Our second case study is specifically to one kind of soft engineering, and that is managed retreat. Managed retreat is deliberately allowing the sea to flood or erode an area of land that may have once been protected. Our example of managed retreat is a place called Medmerry, which is in Chichester in West Sussex. So they allowed the coast to flood and reclaim part of the land, which in doing so created a large natural barrier to stop further erosion of the land behind it. As well as doing this, there were also numerous advantages, such as it provided a value habitat for wildlife, birds and aquatic life, and it's also now a tourist attraction as they created a nature reserve in this part of the country. Finally, we will see an example, an exam question and waggle. So we must evaluate, which means to give an intelligent opinion. What are the patterns behind the facts? Group ideas and weigh them up carefully. So here is our example question. To what extent is hard engineering effective in protecting coast? Worth 6 marks. So firstly, we need to remember our structure. The first thing that we should do is describe. So describe what hard engineering is. Hard engineering strategies are those which use artificial structures to control the environment. Examples might include sea walls, rock armour, and gabions. Nextly, we will explain. Gabions are effective because they can support a cliff or provide a buffer against the sea, but they only last 5 to 10 years. Sea walls are also effective because they have a curved face which reflects the energy of the sea back on itself. They are expensive to maintain, however. Rock armour is very effective at protecting the coast because it deflects wave energy. I continue the second half of the answer. We now explain the opposite. Soft engineering also involves artificial structures at times, for example dune fencing, but these tend to look less intrusive and work with the natural processes rather than stopping them completely. However, they are often criticised as they are less effective at protecting the coast and need more regular maintenance. Finally, as this question asks to what extent, we need to evaluate. Hard engineering strategies can cause knock-on effects elsewhere. If you protect one bit of the coast, the energy is redirected elsewhere and are expensive. But I agree, they are effective at protecting the coast. Geography. Know your world.